The wind stirred the pines on Mount Wutai as Master Jin stood solemnly at the temple gate, a letter clutched in one hand, his eyes heavy with memory. Shen, the old master said softly, you cannot remain here any longer. Shen bowed deeply, his once bold eyes now calm. Master, I await your instruction. Jin handed him the letter and recited in a voice worn by wisdom. When you meet the forest, arise. When you meet the mountain, thrive. When you meet the city, move. When you meet the river, rest. These 4 verses, the elder said, will guide your path. Remember them always. Liangshan bowed 9 times, storing the letter inside his sash. He gathered his belongings, staff, robe, coin pouch, and left the temple in silence. No bells tolled behind him. No farewells were shouted. Only the quiet relief of monks who, truth be told, were glad to see him go. Jin gave one final command, rebuild what had been broken. And thus the fireworkers and disciples mended the shattered pavilion, while the wealthy patron, Zhao Wanwei, returned days later to fund a new golden statue of Vajra. But the tale is not of those who stayed behind. It is of Liangshan, wandering monk, former constable, and fierce drinker, who now walked toward the capital, bearing a sealed letter and a destiny too wild for prayer beads. He spent his nights in roadside inns, not temples. He slept beneath moonlight and thunder. His days were filled with roasted meats and strong wine, his evenings with brawling tales and laughter that shook rafters. Weeks passed. One evening, after a long trek through hills and winding forests, he found himself too far from any town. The sun dipped low, bathing the sky in crimson. Just as he wondered where to rest, he spotted a flicker of red beyond the trees, a manor nestled beneath peach trees, with mountains rising like shadows behind it. A fine place for shelter, he murmured. As he approached, he saw chaos. Villagers rushing, carrying baskets, rolling up mats, and shouting warnings. Jin leaned on his staff and called out, "Friends, may I trouble you for a place to rest the night?" A farmhand looked him up and down, wary. "We've no room for monks. Be on your way." Jin smiled. "It's late. I'm not picky. Even a shed would do." "Go now," the man growled, "or die here." That got Jishin's attention. He raised an eyebrow. "Die, you say, for asking to borrow a roof?" The worker snarled, "If you won't leave, we'll tie you up ourselves." A fire sparked in Jishin's eyes. He tightened his grip on the staff, prepared to let fists speak. But then, from within the manor, came the tap of a cane and the voice of an elder. "What's all this noise?" Out stepped a man in his 60s, lean but dignified, with a long staff and a calm gaze. The villagers quieted. Jishin spoke first. "I'm a monk from Mount Wutai, en route to Dongjing. I sought only a night's rest. Your people threatened to bind me." The old man's eyes softened. "Then you are most welcome, Master Monk. Come in." The old man introduced himself as Liu Tai Gong, the head of the manor known as Peach Blossom Village. He bowed respectfully and led Lu Jishin into the main hall. I hope you'll forgive my people, Liu said with a sigh. They are jumpy tonight. We have troubles. The monk accepted the apology with a nod and placed his staff gently by the door. I've known trouble by many names, he said, sitting cross-legged. But rarely have I seen it dressed in such fine robes. What kind of trouble stalks this peaceful place? Liu hesitated. Tonight, my daughter is to be married, but not by our will. Zhishen raised an eyebrow. Go on. The old man glanced toward the doorway, lowered his voice. On the mountain above us dwells a bandit, calls himself Little Overlord Zhou Tong. He has 100 rogues under his command. Recently he came to our home, saw my daughter, and declared her his bride. Left gold, red silk, and tonight's hour for the ceremony. What could we do? Refuse, and he burns our village to ash. Zhishen took a long breath. Where's your daughter now? Hidden with neighbors. But he will come soon, expecting a wedding bed. Lu Zhishen smiled, not kindly, but like a man remembering the weight of steel in his hands. Then let him come, he said. Taigong blinked. What do you mean? I will lie in that wedding bed, the monk said. Let him greet me as his bride. The old man paled. No, no, Master Monk, he'll kill you. He's a beast. But Lu Zhishen only laughed, and it was not the laugh of a man afraid of beasts. That evening, the villagers arranged the wedding table. Lanterns were lit, red drapes hung, drums prepared. But inside the bridal chamber there was no blushing maiden, only a bald, burly monk stripped to his waist, sitting cross-legged on the bed behind a golden curtain, a grin on his face, and a staff within reach. Outside, firelight flickered as the mountain echoed with drums and voices. Dozens of torch-bearers emerged from the woods, flanking a rider in crimson robes and green-gold armor, seated atop a snowy white steed. Zhou Tong had arrived. He laughed as he entered the manor yard, calling Liu Taigong his father-in-law, tossing aside gifts and goblets. Tonight, he roared, I wed the peach blossom. The villagers bowed. The old man knelt. But his hands trembled. Zhou Tong was already tipsy, his breath thick with rice wine. Where's the bride? He called. She awaits you, the old man whispered. Go, go now. Zhou Tong swaggered to the chamber, shoved open the door, and stepped into darkness. Sweet Blossom, he said, fumbling through the curtain. He reached forward, and instead of silk, his hand met a wall of flesh. A moment later, he was airborne. When he landed, he was pinned beneath Lu Zhishen, who grinned down at him like a thundercloud about to burst. Looking for your bride? The monk growled. What? What is this? Zhou Tong gasped. A fist the size of a melon crashed into his jaw. Outside, the guests heard screams. Within moments, the bandit was a heap of bruises and torn sleeves crawling across the floor. His men burst into the room, weapons raised, only to meet the monk's iron staff, which swept through them like wind through straw. Cries rang through the night as torches scattered and warriors fled into the trees. Zhou Tong stumbled to his feet, bleeding and dazed, and flung himself onto his horse. Old man, he shouted behind him, this isn't over. His voice faded into the dark hills. Inside the manor, Liu Taigong clutched the monk's arm. "Master Liu, you've doomed us." "Doomed?" Jishen laughed, grabbing a roasted goose and a jug of wine from the wedding table. "I've only begun the blessing." Just as the dust settled and the last of the bandits had fled, a sharp voice rang out from beyond the manor gates. "Where is that monk who laid hands on my brother?" A new figure rode in, taller, sterner, and flanked by a fresh gang of torchbearers. He dismounted with practiced ease, spear in hand, eyes narrowing at the broken furniture and bloodied ground. Liu Zhishen stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Another suitor?" The warrior's eyes darted to him, then widened. "Is that Lu Da?" The monk squinted through the torchlight. "Who's asking?" The man dropped his spear, stepped forward, and laughed. "By the heavens, it is you! I am Li Zhong, once a fellow martial brother, now lord of Peach Blossom Mountain." For a moment the air stilled. Then Liu Zhishen burst out laughing. "You old rascal!" The two embraced like soldiers reuniting on a battlefield. Liu Taigong looked between them, mouth ajar. Li Zhong gestured back toward the mountain. "Come, drink with us. It's not every day I get to welcome an old comrade." And so the reluctant guest became an honored visitor. They returned to the mountain stronghold, and there, beneath swaying lanterns and stars pricked in the night sky, Liu Zhishen recounted his story, how he had struck down the butcher in Weizhou, taken monkhood under Master Zhejian at Mount Wutai, and now journeyed toward the great Xiangguo temple in Dongjing, with a letter of recommendation in his bag, and wine always on his breath. Li Zhong listened in awe, pouring wine and slapping the table. "The heavens owe me for tonight. Brother, this mountain was made for men like you. Why not stay?" Jishin shook his head. "I've taken the robe now. I may love a good brawl and a better drink, but I must follow my path." Even Zhou Tong, bruised and bandaged, was brought before him the next morning. When he learned who had flattened him, he bowed low and begged forgiveness, swearing off his claim to Liu Taigong's daughter and promising peace. Liu Zhishen made him vow, on a snapped arrow no less, and Liu Taigong, tears in his eyes, offered the monk anything he wished. "All I want," Zhishen said, rising, "is one more bottle before I leave." But as the monk packed his things, ready to continue his journey, he noticed something curious. A trove of silver, silk, and gold ornaments had been laid out on a table, gifts for his travels. He chuckled. They say monks should not covet wealth, but no one said I couldn't redistribute it. That night he slipped from the mountain quietly, leaving behind only tied-up guards and an empty table. With his bundle slung over one shoulder and staff in hand, he trudged through the woods, vanishing like mist from the peaks. And though Li Zhong and Zhou Tong cursed when they discovered the trick, neither pursued him. Some men, they knew, were better met once in life, and never again in anger.